They say in banking, your clients don't just give you money, they give you secrets. Some secrets, though, can cost you more than gold. This is the story of how one client changed my life forever. A story of temptation, power, and choices that could crown a man or destroy him. I never thought my ambition to rise in the banking world would pull me into a dangerous game of seduction, power, and secrets that could destroy me. I'd been stuck in the back office of the bank for 3 years, buried in numbers, ledgers, and receipts, customer service, teller duties, reconciliations. It was safe and invisible. But everything changed the day I was moved into sales. Suddenly, I wasn't behind a counter anymore. I was the face of the bank, the guy expected to shake hands with millionaires and billionaires, convince them to trust us with their fortunes, and hit targets that made my stomach churn. And I wanted to prove myself, badly. Dozy, our sales superstar, was my mentor. Dozy wasn't just good, he was a legend. He could charm the coldest oil magnate into laughing over lunch and signing a deposit slip. I wanted to learn everything from him. That Monday morning, after our weekly marketing review, Dozy leaned over my desk. "Come with me today," he said with a grin. "We're going to see a prospect I've been chasing for months." We drove through Amadou Bello Way to Rayfield, Jos. He told me about her on the way. "Mrs. Habib Aberonke Adelaja," he said almost reverently. "She and her husband practically own half the tin and columbite mines in Plateau. Money isn't her problem. Finding someone she trusts is." I swallowed hard. This was big. Her office was like a palace disguised as a boardroom. Polished marble floors, mahogany furniture, and the smell of imported leather and perfume. Even the receptionist's smile seemed rehearsed. "Please wait. Madam is in a meeting," she said politely. Dozy sat confidently, but I could see his right foot tapping nervously. I wiped my palms on my trousers. Then the doors opened. She walked in like she owned the world, and maybe she did. Her cream Ankara pantsuit shimmered under the soft lighting, hugging her body like it had been sewn just for her. Her cornrows were woven so intricately they looked sculpted. A single diamond on her finger caught the light with every movement, and her perfume, a soft mix of oud and jasmine, lingered in the air as she extended her hand. "Gentlemen," she said, her voice low and rich, "I'm sorry to keep you waiting." Dozy jumped up, his voice warm but a little shaky. "Good morning, Mrs. Adelaja. I'm Dozy Okoro from—" Her gaze slid past him and landed on me. "And you?" she asked, smiling slightly. "I'm Inem," I said, standing. "I'm part of the sales team." She tilted her head as if sizing me up. Fresh blood. I like that." Dozy cleared his throat. "We're here to discuss how our bank can support your mining and real estate operations." She held up a manicured hand. "Please, sit." Dozy's presentation was flawless. He spoke about wealth management, trade financing, offshore accounts, but I could feel her eyes on me. "Inem," she said suddenly, interrupting a mid-sentence, "what's your take on wealth protection for someone like me?" I hesitated. "For someone like you," I said carefully, "security isn't just about numbers. It's about relationships. You need someone who treats your money like their own." She chuckled softly, a sound that somehow felt like a challenge. Interesting. By the end of the meeting, she leaned back in her chair and said something that made Dozy blink. "I like your bank," she said, "but I want him," she pointed at me, "to be my account officer." The room fell silent. Dozy forced a smile. "Of course, madam. Whatever you prefer." That was the moment my life shifted. After we left the prospect's office, Dozy's face told a story his lips tried to hide. He kept his face calm, but I could read the stiffness in his jaw. He had expected to wrap up the client and open the account, and add the account to his long list of high net worth accounts. He had been grooming her for weeks, but instead, she turned to me and said, "I want Inem to handle my account."
I saw the pain in his eyes when the client picked me to handle her account. Later, he pulled me aside near the stairwell. "You lucky bastard," he said with a half smile, though his tone was clipped. "I won't lie, I'm not thrilled, but she's a big fish. Handle her well. Don't mess this up." I nodded. I know. I didn't plan for it to be me. He studied me for a moment, then slapped my shoulder. "Just remember, not all that glitters in banking is gold. Shine your eyes." Later that same day, the air in the banking hall was heavy. My manager called me into his glass office. He leaned back in his chair, fingers drumming on the table. "Inem, this is your chance. This woman is not just another client. She's a door. Grow that account. I don't just want your monthly targets. I want her to feel like this bank is built around her. Do that, and I'll make sure your name rings upstairs." His words lodged in my chest. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just a task. I wasn't just handling a client. I was standing at the gates of a new chapter.
For the first 3 months, I gave her nothing short of a premium banking experience. I was meticulous. From account opening forms to high-value transfers, not a single error crossed her desk. I monitored her accounts like a hawk. If a credit hit at midnight, I sent her a courteous update before dawn. If a transfer was delayed by a second, I was on the phone with operations. She noticed. "You're efficient," she said one afternoon, her manicured fingers drumming on the glass table in her office. "You don't just serve, you anticipate. That's rare." Her appreciation soon turned into action. She moved most of her major accounts from other banks into mine. My desk became a corridor of movement, alerts, inflows, calls from Treasury. Every week, her balances swelled. For 3 months, I gave her HNI services. No errors, no excuses. Every alert, every check, every credit, I handled like it was my own. She noticed, and then she rewarded me. And then the gifts began. At first, it was subtle, a wristwatch, then a designer tie, then an envelope slipped into my file. I was supposed to declare the envelope gift, but they were within the limits. By the end of the 3rd month, she had introduced me to her husband, a towering man with a politician's smile and businessman's handshake. "My husband will move his business to you," she said, her eyes glinting. "You've earned it." But underneath all that generosity was a request. She leaned close one evening, her perfume wrapping around me like smoke. "All I ask," she whispered, "is your full after-banking hours attention, your personal service." Her gaze held mine. I swallowed hard. That was when I realized this was no longer just banking, but I did not want to lose the account by telling anyone about this conversation. I kept Dozy updated with every transaction, as I did not want to fall his hands in any way. I saw the account as his account, and I held it in trust for him. He was, after all, my mentor. In the flurry of transactions, I began to notice things that didn't add up. One afternoon, while handling a routine check, I bumped into a client of Dozy's in the lobby. He greeted me warmly, but said something strange. "So you're the one Mrs. Adelaja chose, hey? Interesting. Dozy was the one who linked us to her in the first place." The word stuck. Linked us. How deep did this run? That was when it hit me. There was more to her dealings than met the eye. Dozy's connection with her wasn't as casual as it seemed, but that, I told myself, was a story for another day. Meanwhile, her gestures towards me grew bolder. She invited me to lunch with shadowy partners who spoke in riddles and scanned me with probing eyes. She gifted me a brand new suit, saying, "A banker of your caliber must dress like he owns the vault." My ambition wrestled with my fear. Was I rising or sinking? Abuja nights. Then came Abuja, 6 months after she started transacting with me. She called me. "Clear your weekend," she commanded. "I want to see you. There's someone I want you to meet here in Abuja." "Madam, no excuses," she said, and hung up. When I landed at Nnamdi Azikiwe Airport, a sleek black SUV was waiting. Her staff whisked me to a 5-star hotel, the kind of place where the cheapest wine costs more than my salary. One of her male aides checked me in and ensured I had a full weekend at my disposal. Everything was paid for. The room smelled of fresh lilies and expensive polish, the curtains spilling golden light over furniture that screamed wealth. That night, she floated into the lobby in a silk emerald gown. Heads turned. She smiled at me like I belonged to her. "Welcome to Abuja," she whispered, slipping her hand through mine. "This weekend will be productive." Dinner was in a private suite. Two men she introduced only as investors barely spoke, but their presence pressed against my chest like a weight. Later, back in the hotel suite, she poured wine. Her diamond ring glinted as she placed her hand over mine. "You've done well," she said softly. "You've earned my trust, and my trust is not cheap." "You're ambitious," she said, sitting close. "I see it in your eyes. You remind me of my husband when he was young." She smiled and leaned closer. "But you're sharper." I laughed nervously. Thank you, ma'am." I sipped my wine, trying to ignore the heat rising in my face. "You're mutual, madam?" She tilted her head. "Good, because I don't mix business and pleasure lightly." She paused, her gaze locking onto mine. "But with you, I'm tempted." My breath caught. "I can give you more than a promotion," she whispered. "I can give you a life you've only dreamed of. Everything you want. Power, influence, money." She leaned so close I could feel her breath on my cheek. "All I want," she said softly, "is you." My heart pounded in my chest. Next month, I was expecting a massive inflow into one of her new company's accounts, enough to catapult me into a league I'd only dreamed of. And in the branch balance sheet? She placed her hand over mine, her diamond ring cold against my skin. "So," she whispered, her lips curling into a smile, "what's it gonna be?" Her eyes lingered on me, burning with something between promise and threat. The Abuja skyline flickered outside the window, but inside, her perfume, her touch, her voice, they were the trap. And I couldn't breathe. The long drive. 3 weeks after Abuja, my phone buzzed. It was her secretary. "Madam wants to see you. Tomorrow. In her office." That night, I couldn't sleep. My girlfriend's laughter played in my mind, soft and innocent. She believed I was grinding for us, for our future. But what would she think if she knew? The next day, as I gripped the steering wheel on the long drive to her office, my thoughts raced. Was this loyalty or betrayal? Ambition or destruction? Every mile I drove, the questions pressed harder. Would I give in to her demands fully? Could I resist and still keep the doors she had opened? And most dangerously, what if Dozy already knew more than he was saying? By the time I pulled into her office complex, my palms were sweating. I killed the engine and sat there, staring at the glass building ahead. Inside those walls waited Adoranke. Beautiful, powerful, dangerous, and the answer to a question that could either crown me or ruin me. I stepped out of the car, my heart pounding like a war drum. The story had only just begun. What she asked of me next would test everything I thought I knew about loyalty, ambition, and desire. What would you do if you were in my shoes? Leave your comment in the comment sections. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and turn on notification to see how it turned out. See you soon.